So this particular film, the music is going to be very, very important. So listen carefully. A lot of the music is by Simon and Garfunkel, which creates a nice cohesion, and their lyrics do a nice job of connecting major plot points. The director is Nichols. He was born in 1931, and he's one of those few individuals who have won an Oscar, a Grammy, an Emmy, and a Tony Award, which is really, really hard to do. So not only is he talented as a director, but he's also talented with music. His first film that was nominated for an Oscar was Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which he did right before The Graduate. So The Graduate was really, really early in his career, and he had a lot of success in the 60s, and then he came back in the 1990s and had a lot more success there. So he took some time off, he went to Broadway for a while, and then he went back to Hollywood. In 1968, he was nominated for Best Director for The Graduate. He's been married a lot of times, and his current wife is Diane Sawyer, and they've been married since 1988. And you've all probably recognized Diane Sawyer as a newscaster. In 2010, he was nominated for a Lifetime Achievement Award. So he's been around for a very long time. He's been very critically acclaimed in several different decades. So we know his work is really, really, really solid. Like I said, he had the 2000s. He had a lot of success here, and then he had a lot of success in that generation as well. And a lot of his movies have been adapted to be on Broadway. So The Graduate was on Broadway I believe it was in 2002. Wit, Closer, Angels in America, those are all things that were previously on Broadway before they became movies. So he did a lot of crossover work there. Catch-22, Teach Me, The Graduate, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, those are his most popular early works, and then those are some of his more popular later works. What was so interesting about The Graduate was that it was really a reflection of the culture of the time. In the 1960s, there was a lot of change, there was a lot of war, there was a lot of social turmoil between the young generation and the old generation. So this film really does a nice job highlighting a lot of the social issues that were going on. It was a new era of filmmaking. So in the 1960s, like we saw with The Graduate too, filmmakers were starting to take some risks that led to a lot of the types of films that we have today. Radical, bless you, experiments with editing, visual style, and narrative. So now they were starting to get some groundbreaking technology, which allowed them to do some pretty cool things. This particular film, bless you again, was filmed with a lot of improv. So he allowed the actors to play and experiment, which keeps the acting more real, more realistic, more believable. Dustin Hoffman, who plays the lead character, which we'll get to in a second, a lot of his character is bumbly and goofy and awkward, and that kind of is who Dustin Hoffman was in his early days. There's some jittery editing, some of those odd camera angles, not as many as we saw in Psycho, but we are going to see a lot of really, really unique and very, very, very original shots, particularly the one with the leg, and we'll talk about this iconic shot when we get to it in the film. It's a satire, it's a comedy, but there's also some very dramatic moments. And we're going to see our main character, Benjamin, going through some really difficult changes in his life, and he doesn't handle them very well. I think this movie, even though a lot of it is, it is dated, but I think his particular character is one that, especially if you're transitioning from high school to college or from college to the quote-unquote real world, it's his feelings and emotions are really relatable, which is why I still really enjoy this film today, personally. Film mirrored the changes in Hollywood, very experimental, avant-garde artists, which leads us to the classified American New Wave. So from 1966 to 1982, we saw a lot of films taking on this experimental, bless you, area. So a new, younger generation of filmmakers. This was really early in Nichols' career, so he was really, really willing to take some risks, which make it pretty fun. Marketing impacted the way that studios filmed. So in this particular era, we saw that marketing and advertising was starting to really impact who was going to the movies. So we're going to see that connection. All right, in the 50s and 60s, Hollywood was dominated by musicals, historical epics, but as a younger generation was returning to war or protesting war, they wanted something different. So that's where we got, yeah, some of these are not in here. That's where we got the baby boomer generation, and I know you've heard of this generation. It's a huge generation. This was the film that they rebelled with. They felt that the baby boomer generation felt that this particular film spoke to them. Even though a lot of people thought that this film was not going to be a success, much like Psycho was supposed to be a B movie, this particular film hit home with a very specific generation, and it turned out to be this huge, iconic success. All right, here's where your notes pick back up. In the 60s, a lot of people were really dissatisfied with the middle class, which I think if we look at our economic times right now, we see a lot of middle class dissatisfaction with the United States. So we could draw some parallels there. The Vietnam War was huge, and that was what was driving a lot of unrest with the younger generation as well. And Simon and Garfunkel were huge, and because they were so huge, Nichols really capitalized on those songs, and it really drew and drove the storyline. So I really challenge you folks to listen carefully to the songs because they're going to connect so well with everything that Benjamin is feeling. All right, again, that change in Hollywood emphasized realism. Life, not everything is happy, and I think Benjamin does a nice job showing that life is very complicated, and sometimes there are some difficult issues that you have to face. So this isn't a fairy tale type story. This is definitely something that's gritty, real, and a little awkward at times because of some of those invasive, voyeuristic camera angles that we see. The location, everything was on location. So they actually went to hotels to film. Instead of building sets on some sound studio, they tried to go out into the real world and make it a very realistic feel. So that really helped make the film itself seem more believable.